Mirror. All right. Welcome to week 7. Yay! Well, getting close to the end. So we've been doing session beans the last few weeks, and next 2 weeks we're going to be looking at message-driven beans. And the message-driven beans topic is sort of split into 2. So the first one is just looking at JMS, and then next week we're actually going to look at message-driven beans themselves. So first, let's look at the quiz for the week. So our average is 80, but the 2 bottom questions really got some people, and it's Roy's little tricksy questions there. Let's just go and have a look at them. So it's question 1 and 6. The first one is on a bean managed singleton bean, the default lock in every method is right lock. So the one thing that probably a few people missed out is that it says bean managed. So it doesn't matter what right lock, there's nothing like a right lock or a read lock. It doesn't count for bean managed, it must be container managed. So in the exam, look out for those things, because this question kind of looks easy and quick to answer, but you need to look out for these types of things where they mix it up like this. So it's just, so the ones here, it's false, because there is nothing like right lock on a bean managed singleton. The other one was question 6. And this is the remove method causes the removal of a stateless station bean after the remove method ends successfully. Once again, tricksy. So it says stateless bean and not stateful, so it's actually not going to make a difference. There's nothing like a remove method on a stateless bean.
So let's throw an exception.
I think it'll, if it's a public method, it'll probably just do nothing. You'll just call it. I haven't tried it. I'll try it out maybe. Because I'm in the annotation, it's going to try, and it's probably when it starts up the container, it's going to set up the script, and it'll just ignore that remove annotation. So unless you're doing something funky in the method itself, and then, but it'll still be there. So if you're going to release
just to confuse the developers who take over your code.
Yeah. Probably, I mean, if you're going to release some resource or something, and you're probably going to have a lot of fun calling any other method after that on the status bean. And last one is question 4. Right, yeah, question 4. And so it's like a 70%. It's not too bad. And this one was sort of just looking at starting up singleton beans. So they're not saying anything, there's no startup one here, there's nothing saying, you know, anything's being called on the singleton method. So when it comes to starting up a singleton, if you're not specifying it to start on startup, the container can start at any time. If it wants to start up when the application starts up, it can do that. If it's only going to start up once the first business method gets called, it can do that as well. So the main thing is knowing that the container can start it up any time or not start it up, and then just knowing the life cycle on it. So it'll be the constructor and then the post construct. So it can either be the SSB created and then SSB initiated, or nothing. So that's the answer there. But otherwise, the quiz doesn't actually go too bad. And the singletons aren't difficult because it's quite logical. There's no, you just read the questions and see what's happening there. And most of the other things, it wasn't like people had any of the other things actually and anything wrong. It was just people didn't answer all the questions. So sometimes they'd ask for 2 answers and then they only gave 1. So this one was an example as well, where nobody actually had the thing completely wrong. People just didn't answer everything. So in the exam, in the certification exam, just look out for that. They actually do tell you answer 2 questions or which 3 are correct. And when you finish the certification as well, if you haven't written this before, it actually shows you a list of your questions you've done, and it'll show you if anything isn't completely answered. It's either bolded up or something. It'll actually show you if you're missing some answers there. But unfortunately with Moodle, they don't do that. It's hardcore. Moodle doesn't help.
The latest Moodle also.
Latest Moodle. Okay. Any questions on the quiz? Anything anyone wants to add? Silence? Okay. All right, so let's get into this week's topic. So I said the messaging beans bit of the certification split into 2. So the first one is just looking at JMS overall without worrying about the beans, and the next we're going to look at the beans. So that's really looking at the technology, just looking at how JMS fits into the bigger picture, and then we're going to create a queue producer and a queue consumer just to see if you're doing that outside of the normal JE stuff, how that'll look. So where this topic fits into the overall scheme is just looking at the JMS bit there. That's something the container controls. So this has got nothing really to do with the bean yet. I'm going to look at the beans next week. All right, so what JMS is the Java Messaging Service API. And it allows for the sending and receiving and all that stuff around messages. So it plays the same role as something like your JDBC that gives you different database connections. This is the same way giving you different connections to the different JMS servers that are available. So it forms part of the normal JE API. And if you've got a full provider, so not your light provider, it has to make provision for the messaging service. Pretty much all the container providers have their own flavor of MQ that they use, and I think most of them you can go and change it out. You can go and swap it out for something else, but I wouldn't say there's really a reason for that. Rory's tried this before, and he would not recommend it. It also helps sort of if you are using container, knowing which provider it's using for that. So if you're using Waze, it'll be IBM. Wildfly, it'll be Hornet. Tommy uses ActiveMQ, which is Apache's one. Glassfish uses OpenMQ. And then some of the books and so on also refer to the JMS sort of layer as a messaging-orientated middleware. So that's really old school. So if you go back to like mainframe systems, you'll also have that same type of bus type thing, but then they sort of refer to it as message-orientated middleware. So the key points around messaging and why you'd want to look at doing something like messaging is because it creates a loosely coupled architecture where something with the normal singleton beans and session beans, you actually need to have an instance of that bean or proxy to it, but you need to know about that bean, and it needs to be Java bean. It can't be something else. So with messaging technology, it can be a completely different application. You don't have to have any idea about who's kind of consuming it or where I'm getting my message from. It can be a different technology, as long as something on the other side either can read from an MQ or write to an MQ, and that's all you need. With JMS, it's also guaranteed that it will be delivered. So the message, if it is in a transaction, part of finishing that transaction is the JMS provider says, cool, I've got the message and it's ready to go. Whether the consumer at the other side actually received it falls outside the transaction, because like I said, that could be a completely different technology that's going to get it. It can be synchronous or asynchronous. And like I said, then there's no security context, because like I said, the other one can be running a completely different domain, different realm. It's not going to make sense. There's no way that it's necessarily going to be able. It's not impossible, but it's not part of the JMS API or the Java EE stuff. Then when you're looking at sort of using a JMS or using messaging, there's sort of two main types of, they're called messaging application architectures or messaging models. And the main thing you need to know about this for the exam is questions around, when you choose which one and what you'd use for them. So the first one is a point-to-point model. So actually you've got one consumer and one producer. So the consumer puts a message on there, and there's one consumer that's going to read it. So if there's more than one consumer, that message is only going to go to one of them. So it's a one-to-one. And the main thing is that's being done through a queue. So it's like one pipe that goes out, and there's one bit of information goes on the other side, and it can only go to one person on the other end. So the important thing to remember there, it's like you've got which type of scenarios you'd use that for. So it'll be something where you've got maybe a messaging system, but a system where you maybe have got like a receipt flowing through the system, or a billing order or something like that, where you don't want to go and bill the guy twice because two things picked up that order. And also that you'll use a queue for that. The other thing is a topic, and this is where you don't have one consumer at the side, you can have multiple consumers. And for a producer there, he's going to sort of broadcast a message, and you'll see something like this, like with a stock type system where as new information comes in about which stocks have been sold and are available, they'll be pushed out, and there'll be a bunch of listeners listening to it. Maybe something that's pushing to a chart on the front end, something that's maybe doing some risk calculations in the back end. So that's sort of a publish and subscribe type thing. And for that we use a topic. So that's the two important things: when you're going to use a queue and when you're going to use a topic, and they'll ask you that type of questions. I might even give you a bit of source code and sort of ask you, which scenario will this fit in, or this is a scenario, which piece of code will work for that. You'll need to know the difference between a topic and a queue. Then looking at the different parts of the JMS API. First one is the provider, so that's your server. That's the actual machinery around pushing the messages around and making sure that they're durable. Then you've also got your JMS client. Your JMS client can either be a consumer or a producer. So that's sort of whatever is using the JMS provider. And then they've also got, they call administered objects. So that's sort of to get access to your different queues and your topics and so on. You need a factory. So what you'll usually do is in your whichever container you're using, you'll set up a factory for it, a connection factory, and you also set up a destination. And a destination is sort of the combined name for a queue or a topic. So somewhere that you're going to be sending this message to. Anything else I wanted to mention? Yeah, I don't think so. And then, of course, you've got your message that you're actually going to be sending around. And your message is broken up into a few different parts. So you've got your message header, and your message header is set up by the provider. So it doesn't matter what message you send where, all of them will have the same information or type of information in the header. Usually something like a correlation ID, a reply to node, that type of stuff. Then you'll also get your message properties. So message properties will be anything that from whatever is sending the message or any additional information that you might want to add onto it. So it's sort of proprietary. Whatever you want to do, if you want to go and add something around security maybe, or you want to add a unique ID that you want to read on the other side, any custom data you'll put in your message properties, and in your message body will be actual payload. And the payload doesn't need to be text or XML. It can be a byte stream. It can be bytes, stream, an object.
You really want to confuse people.
Soap for an MQ. And whichever else. So there's a few different options there. And for the exam, you'll need to know those different options, but they pretty much work the same. They've got the same sort of pattern that they follow. And that's sort of it for the JMS stuff. That's sort of what you need to know in short about it. So the type of questions I say is around knowing when it's a queue, when it's a topic. The different things about between a message header and a property, you might get a question like that. And I don't think you need to know anything specifically about the participants. And then the other questions will be around the actual code around it. So for today, I'm just going to have one big demo. So the first, we're going to set up Glassfish, just show you guys how to get queues and so on set up and running there. If you want to do it in Tommy, there is the open EJP certification one has one in there. That's got an example of it. And maybe I'll just quickly show you guys. I couldn't get the browsing to work on it. I could get it to send and read, but not browse. If you want to set up any of the other MQ containers,
good luck.
Good luck. Waz or Wildfly. And so if I thought, let me try Wildfly, and then I couldn't even find a menu option for setting it up. It's just all command line. But in essence, doesn't matter which container you're going to use or how you're going to set that up with using Tommy or Glassfish or Wildfly. You're going to need to set up a destination resource, so your queue or your topic, and you're going to need to set up a factory. So I'm just going to do that for Glassfish first. I'm going to say sort of Glassfish isn't the greatest container, but from playing around and testing, it's easy to work with. And a lot of the demos, especially the NetBeans ones, use Glassfish. So to get it set up, you just have to start up your Glassfish server, log into your admin console, which is 4848 by default, and then under resources, you've got your JMS resources. And I think any of the other containers, you'll usually look for something under resources somewhere to get your JMS stuff. So the first thing you can go and do is set up a destination resource. So there you just go new. We're going to give it its Gendy name. So if you guys remember from the old Gendy and looking up resources, this is where you give it a name. Generally the format will be something like JMS / and whatever the physical destination's name is. I just want to go and copy this from the source code because I don't want to have this wrong. I'm just going to call it JMS demo queue. You've got your physical destination. This will be the actual name of the queue. So if you're going to use a queue browser, this is the name you're going to see for it. And then you go and pick your resource type. So either a queue or topic. And I say sort of for that you'll need to know if you're going to have a queue, it means that the provider is only going to have one copy of the message, and only one copy is going to be delivered ever. If it was a topic, it'll hold the copy in. Whoever subscribes to it will pull it down. If you are looking at something like a topic type messaging, there's the concept of a durable connection. So with a normal queue, if something produces that message, the message will sit there until the one consumer goes and picks it up. It won't just get lost, even if you restart the server. But with a topic, if something isn't listening to it at that time, and that message gets broadcast, it's going to be missing. So you've got that. You have a durable solution of a durable queue, a durable topic. So what happens is, if the specific subscriber is offline and that message gets broadcast, if he's got a durable subscription, once he comes back online, he'll go and get whatever messages he didn't get while he was offline. So you can set it up like that as well. If you're going to do that, though, you just have to set some limits because it can kill resources. So we're just going to set up our queue, and that's it. And most MQ or JMS providers, if you set up a physical queue, it doesn't necessarily go and create that queue for you. And the only time it'll create it is the first time you send a message. It'll actually go and create it for you. And then you can go and set up a connection factory. So it's got a default connection factory which you can use out of the box. You don't have to go and set up your own one here. And for this one, I'm just going to do the same. Once again, just sort of a normal configurations, JMS / whatever type you're doing, queue factory, topic factory. And you can also do like a generic just connection factory if you want to. And like I said, the reason for that, the reason you might have more than one factory there is just for dividing the labor there. You know, you might not want to have all your queues created for one connection factory. You might have to have two, or you might have your queues and your topics in two different factories. Or if you just have a normal connection factory, everything just goes through one thing. So it's more depending on your architecture and your resource usage and what you want to do there. So I'm just going to create a queue connection factory there, and then your pool size and all that stuff. So for the exam, you don't need to know anything about this, but you need to be able to do this, know where it comes from, and to just actually play around with the code. So you're going to create that, and that's it. So that's it for setting up any container, getting a container ready for messaging. There's simple steps, and in the slides I've got all the details around that, so you can go and have a look there. So that was the demo set up Glassfish for. Glassfish 3, I think, is just a bit of a different menu option, but otherwise it's the same steps. All right, so looking at setting up producers and consumers, one thing to sort of the picture you need to see when setting this up before you look at the code is that you always, before you're starting anything, you're going to need a connection factory. So you start with your connection factory, and I've sort of put that in a little gray color, and you get that from your Gendy. So it's a resource you're going to inject into whatever you're using. If you're using another bean or a servlet or whatever else, you're going to need a connection factory that you're going to need to get from a Gendy. And the other thing you're going to need is your destination, so your actual queue or topic. You need to inject that into whatever you're using there. And from your connection factory, you're going to create a connection. From a connection, you're going to create a session. And your session is what you use to go and create consumers, producers, and other messages. So that's just the type of flow. So where you're doing a consumer, producer, getting a message, you're going to need to get to a session, and that you get from a connection, that you get from a connection factory. So for the first one, we're going to create a producer. So I'm not going to go through the slide. I'm just going to go through the demo. But in the slide just explains. It's going to explain how I set this up now. So let's do a demo about setting up a producer here. Let's close some things here. At the school.
They're young. I don't know. Maybe it's like your Utah school.
Okay, so for this, I've just got a little servlet set up here. So it's nothing EJB or anything. It's just normal servlet. One thing with Glassfish, and I couldn't get this to work. It worked, but I couldn't get it to inject using the @resource. It just didn't want to. I tried everything. It just didn't want to work. It should work, but I couldn't get it to work with Glassfish. But with Tommy, it works fine. So I'm not going to use resource, but you could have done injection through the resource as well. Or he didn't want to help me. He just said, stop using glassfish. You just tell me. Right, so we're going to need to get the initial context here. Up. And then we're going to get our connection factory. So it's a Q connection factory. From the context, so initial context dot lookup. And here we're going to use our GND name that we specified in Glassfish.
So this sits in the same container as the Q phase.
Yeah.
Still have to do GND lookup.
Yes. Yeah. And because this returns an object, I'm just going to need to cast it to that. The other bit that we'll also need to do here is we need to make provision for the JMS exception. So the base exception for all the JMS type things comes from JMS exception. For naming exception. Okay, so Genesis is naming exception there, but the JMS will be the JMS stuff will be the JMS exception. And then we just need to get the actual destination, which is a Q. No. QJMS. So we need to get this from the initial context as well. So I'm going to look it up. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, like you said, you asked if whichever way you're getting to your GND. So if you're publishing to something like a web container that's got its own GND, but that's fine. But if you're going to use something like a standard edition Java, you're going to have some way, like a client, like a Glassfish client or something like that, to actually get your GND stuff. So wherever your MQ or if your JMS provider is hosted, you're going to need to get to the GND there. So if you're deploying to there, it'll be in there. But if you're using like a standard edition, you're going to need to get like a client version of whatever you're using there.
No, yeah, the at resource would have been so much easier.
I know. I tried it. I didn't want to do this.
Now with JE7 one.
Yeah, 7.
It's like one line.
Yeah, so in JE7, actually, instead of having the whole, let's get back here. Instead of having this whole connection factory, getting a connection, getting a session, all you need there is you get a JMS context. So from your JMS context, you can get your consumer, your producer, your message. So it makes it like one line of code to get everything going there.
This is all RPM.
Yeah, so it's much easier on the latest version. But we're not writing an exam about that.
These people will never know the suffering.
Right, so it says so we need those 2 injections. Then we need to get our actual connection, so that's the next we're going to get. So we get the connection. And we get this from the connection factory. And so all of these sort of follow the same thing. Whatever you need next, create whatever. So we're going to create a Q connection. I think this will ask for the JMS one. Yeah, that's right. So this one is the JMS exception. And then from the connection, we're going to create our session. Connection. Let's create session. When you create a session, you can sort of see there's 2 parameters that it wants passed in. So the first one is whether you want this to take part in a transaction. So that's when I say taking part in a transaction, it's knowing that, listen here, this thing has been, I care about the thing that this thing gets actually delivered to the provider, and the provider's happy with it. If it doesn't, then I need it to tell me that. So you can just make it false there.
That will also depend on the underlying library and provider.
Yeah, so it's like Glassfish doesn't care. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't care. You can true, false. It doesn't care. Yeah. So it's, I think sort of if you, because I'm using a Q connection, I think if you just use the generic connection, you can do a create session without even specifying that. I think so. For the exam, you're going to need to know this, what those things are for. And the next.
I felt an interview on this. This is very traumatic shit for me.
And the next one is you need to sort of set the acknowledgement mode. So auto acknowledge client, dupe session. Just be aware of it. Probably duplex. So you want to,
So commit.
yeah. And that's it. So we've set up our session connections. Now we can start sending a message. For that, we're going to need an actual message to send. And like I said, they've got a few different ones. We're going to do a text message today, but you get an object message, which will be if you want to actually serialize a class and send that across the wire. You get bytes, you get streams. Yeah, there's 4 or 5 of them. So you'll need to know that for the exam. So the text message. Text message equal to, like I said, from this we need to create this from the session. So we're going to session dot create text message. And you can either, when you create the message, put the information in there, or you can do a set message. I'm just going to go the longer route. So I'm going to say text message dot set text message dot set text. I'm just going to go JMS message. And then we want to create a producer message producer. So once going to create that from the session, so session.create producer. When you create a producer, you have to go and specify your destination. So first we're going to give a queue that knows where it needs to send that message to. I'm going to go message producer dot send, and we're going to send the message. And that's all you need.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines of code.
So JMX context, if you inject it via the resource, it's a one line actually. You can do it in one liner.
Yeah, and I can see why the whole drive for JE7 really was for this. Everyone was excited for what you're going to do.
Yeah, I'm just going to print this to the page. And that's what you need to do to send the message. So I'm just going to deploy this, and hopefully it works. It takes so long to deploy to Glassfish.
Valtire's faster, but it's a nightmare to set up.
Yeah, 11 seconds to deploy the wire.
2.
Yeah.
And you've got a solid state, eh? On 9.
I don't think it cares. Where's the... Alright, so if I go and hit the servlet here, hopefully this will work. Come on, Glassfish, don't let me down. So you can see sort of it goes through, message sent. Now, one thing with your different M queues, you need to wait to inspect those queues. The Glassfish doesn't have anything really cool. It doesn't have anything. You've got stuff you can look at, but it's difficult to browse. Like ActiveMQ, you've actually got the... You can go and hit the URL wherever your provider is hosted, and it'll be 616161. You can go and see the messages on there. With Glassfish, if you do want to go and see something there, they've got a little tool that you can use. So if you go to Glassfish, Glassfish 4, MQ, bin, they've got this IMQ admin that you can go and start up. And just go and connect to your local broker there. And you can see we've got 2 destinations. And if we go to our demo queue, that's a physical destination we created. We can go and look at the properties there, and we can see there's one message on there that's 127 bytes. No, I couldn't browse it, no. Like I looked for it. I didn't spend a lot of time seeing it, but this is sort of.
So that's like they probably licensed the browse feature with an Oracle bit of software somewhere.
Yeah, so at least you can see there's one message currently sitting on there. So many things open here. Okay. Tell me. No. How am I just going to get the browse to work? I was doing wrong there. All right, so the next thing is you can also go and browse that messages, actually see what's on the queue without actually pulling stuff down from the queue. So that's you do that through a browser. It's going to get a queue browser. Queue browser. And once again, we get this from the session.
It's like a peek.
Yeah, it's like a peek. So you're looking at what's happening without actually pulling it down.
Because they know peek and pop. Remember peek and pop. Gee, where's Malta?
All right, so you get your Q browser, and from a Q browser, you just get a normal enumeration up there. Right. It's not generic. You know, what'll actually make this a lot easier if it was generic, and you can actually create a enumeration, or you can actually create a Q browser that says this is the type of thing I'm going to get off. I'm going to get a text message off of it, or I'm going to get a. It just make it so much easier. And you don't have to code and cast everything the whole time.
Yeah, but you're making the assumption that the same provider provides the message in the same format, so maybe.
Well, I should hope so. Well, if it is, I mean, you can assume that because if you're the producer, you could assume that. Doesn't make it easier, I think.
So much money on this.
Q browser. Let's get the enumeration there. And then, like working with any enumerator, we're going to just wrap it in a while loop. And say enumeration dot has more elements. So while you've still got elements, bring them down. We know it's a text message that's going to come down. And then we're going to say enumeration dot next element. And because it comes back as an object, we're simply going to cast it. The text message. Then we can just going to print that out. It text. Nope. Message dot get text. I just want to add our print here. Is that browsing? Okay, so we got the Q browser from the session. From there we got the enumeration, and now we're just enumerating for it, checking for more elements and pulling it off and printing it out. So, but we're not actually consuming them off the queue.
What happens if there's anything other than a text message?
Well, the cast will fail. I mean, you can go the same way that before you cast anything, you can add a bit of safety there.
Yeah, there should be a type, is it not?
It
does not give you some kind of type in generics.
I think one of the books had a thing about checking, or actually I think the cookbook has some example code to see what's coming down if it's a text message or an object message. We can test it. No. So it's in the void. So if I get this, it's going to put another message on there. So we're going to get two messages on the queue and then going to browse two. So if I do it again, we're going to have three messages on that queue now. So you can see it's sort of browsing it, reading the messages, but not consuming them off the queue. We're going to look at a little tool. Where's a little tool? It should show three messages now. So refresh, properties, things there's three messages sitting there now. So now if we want to go and consume them, we need to go and create a consumer. And that's the next little demo here. So I've skipped away from the slides. But in the slides, I'll explain everything again. Nope. Wrong one. Okay. The main thing when you are going to consume a queue is you need to open a connection to it. So when you're writing to a queue or producing it, you don't need to worry much about opening the actual connection to the MQ. When you send it, it'll open and close it for you. You don't have to worry about that. But when you're actually going to read from the queue, you need to open the connection. Because, you know, sometimes there mightn't be a message at that specific point, so you need to open it, read it, wait for it, and then pull it down. So for that, we're going to have a message consumer. Once again, we're getting that from the session. And we give it the destination, so where we're going to look from. So we go and say connection dot start and connection close. So I'm just closing it in the code, but you probably want to put this in the finally instead of just straight afterwards. So I've got a message consumer there. From the message consumer, I'm just going to read a text message. So it's a message consumer dot receive. So you're going to do a receive now. There's a few different receives here. The one that you wouldn't want to do is the one that doesn't have a timeout. because otherwise that thing will block until it eventually gets a message on there. So you don't want to do that. You can, but don't. Then you've got your normal receive that I'm going to use here, which actually you can give it a timeout.
Features. That's also another new feature, 7.
Yeah, and then you also have a few interfaces if you can do it asynchronously with actually some events get fired, and you can do it like that as well. So there's a few different ways of doing it. Yeah, for the exam, I think you really just need to know about the receive. Once again, you're just going to cast this. I just want to go and see that I actually got a message here before I actually do something. I'm going to check that that message isn't unequal to null. And then I'm actually just going to print it out. And then go and get the next message off. Copy pasta. What is receiving, consuming? All right, so once again, using the session to create a consumer, doing receive. One thing you don't want to block on that receive, so you just want to have a timeout there, or you can use one of the asynchronous ways of doing it. One thing that if you are going to be doing it like from a servlet like you probably don't want to do it asynchronously, because otherwise that servlet is going to do nothing. Somebody's going to hit that servlet, it's just going to sit and idle there until a message comes in. So you probably don't want to do it like that. This is redeploy it. The best practice is do not use an asynchronous call on a servlet when doing this messaging. No. It's deployed. So what we should see now is we should see it browsing, showing 4 messages there, and then receiving 4 messages. If everything doesn't blow up. Come on, Glassfish. There we go. So we've got our 4 messages, and it's consumed 4 messages. If we now go and look at our little tool, there should be no messages left on that queue because we've actually consumed all 4 of them. Refresh. You can see 0 messages. So that's the difference between the browsing it and consuming. So consuming takes it off the queue. If it was a topic and we had a durable subscription, it would have sat there. You could go and get it afterwards. You can move the queue. Once it's consumed, it's gone. If I go here again, we should just see 1 message every time being consumed and produced. So that's it for the first week. So next week we'll look at actual using message-driven beans to consume the messages and send messages. After this is what you sort of need to know for this first topic. Standard JMS, how to set it up, how to create a standard message consumer, a producer, how to send a message, and how to browse it.
And take a peek at the enterprise integration patterns.
Yeah, so the one thing that I didn't mention, thank you for pointing that out, there's a few slides back actually. I was talking about, yeah, I snuck it in here. So one thing to go and look at for this, even if you're not an architect, but it's something you're interested in, you should probably just go and have a look at the enterprise integration patterns. That's a book that, what's it, Bobby Wolf and somebody Hope.
Okay.
Let's grab that.
Camel's based on it.
So it's this little book here, Enterprise Integration Patterns, Gregor Hope and Bobby Wolf. There's a website as well. The website doesn't have as much content as the book though. It shows the basics, but there's no code demos or anything on there. So if you want to go and see a bit more about that, you can go and look at messaging channels, and then we've got a point-to-point and publish and subscribe. So it's actually not a bad book. So I've got nice explanation about everything, when you'd use it, sort of in a question format. So how can the caller be sure that exactly one receiver will receive it? And then it'll be like, okay, well, you can use a point-to-point messaging system through a queue. And they've also got some examples here in Java and .NET messaging queue. So maybe you should read this before you tackle those messaging services, queue services that apps are, Rory. You can rewrite them in .NET. All right, so that's. So you can also go and look at the actual website, Enterprise Integration Patterns. That's in the presentation. And that's it. So any questions? Oh. Wembo, I could Glassfish Jam is working on my computer via resource annotation. It's an open source QVR. Okay, so Wembo, thank you. So this says Wembo put some effort in to go and find this stuff. Much more than I did. All right, so what I'll do is I'll grab this off the chat and just actually add it. Or Wembo, you can go and just put it on the news forum on the on Moodle, so that other people can get it. Now, it says if my resource injection worked for like 2 minutes and then it stopped working. I don't know what I broke. All right, so for this weekend, 10 questions again. Because this topic isn't as difficult and you sort of want to start getting you ready for the certification, you've only got 30 minutes for this one. So that's 3 minutes a question. Yeah, that's right. My maths are there, I'm sort of... So the quiz opens on Friday, closes on Sunday. And if you can't write it. Try and let us know beforehand so you can maybe open it earlier instead of later. Because otherwise I have to wait until Tuesday night to finish the slides. I don't like that. We'll get up early to do it. Then for next week's reading, a lot of the same chapters that you had to read for this week, but just the other section. So this week's reading was just around JMS and the default generic messaging consumers and producers. And next week's reading is actually about MDB, message-driven beans, life cycles, creating them, best practices, the same things we did for session beans. Then the attendance keyword for this week is time, for some reason. I don't know why.
I think everyone was coming late to the session last year.
Maybe. So,
I think they were late.
Yeah, so the keyword is time. All right, so that's it. So Wembo, if you can just go and put that information on the news forum.
Rather not in the news forum because it just clutters it. You can just send it out to the distro.
How'd you post on the news forum?
Just say again, Wembo.
How'd you do that?
You rather don't do that. Just send it out to the distro.
Okay. Yeah, just email it out. Rory does want people.
The enterprise book on the forum as well, on the Moodle.
It's, well, I don't know if I want to put my legal in quotes copy on there, but
You just email it out.
what I'll do is I'll see how big it is and email it out, or we'll put it somewhere. But I'm not going to put it on Moodle, but I'll send you. I'll try and get you.
Okay, thanks.
If you want to go to the store where I buy my books,
I'll just check on torrent.
it-ebooks.com is a good source. Most of these.
They have specials all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Buy once, get millions. All right. Cool, thanks everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.